Selected 1, a momentous event is currently taking place. The forces who have dedicated their lives to stifling your light are about to suffer the repercussions of their worst error in judgment. You've always been aware of your uniqueness. You're going to learn why they are so terrified of that difference. Here are some things they didn't tell you about your health issues, financial obstacles, relationship betrayals, and childhood hardships. It wasn't all random. Every barrier was positioned with purpose. Each betrayal was planned. The only goal of every setback was to keep you from realizing the nuclear-level power you possess. The storyline surprise that will alter everything, however, is right here. You weren't intended to be destroyed by their attacks. You were supposed to be forged by them. You weren't being broken by every hammer strike to the anvil of your life. Their whole system would finally be reduced to ashes by the relentless force it was producing. You're going to see why creating you, their adversary, will go down as the greatest disastrous mistake in spiritual warfare history. Now is when you start to change from target to terminator. You held something that shook the darkness from the moment you breathed. Not because you had superhuman talent from birth, but you did. You have heavenly insight, but not because of that. You posed a threat since your mere existence runs counter to all the foundations upon which they base their authority. You're like a human version of a truth serum. Those around you are unable to keep their masks on for too long. Whether they like it or not, their true personalities show through. You didn't learn how to do this. Your spiritual DNA contains this information. The enemy of deceit is revelation, and you are a living revelation machine. Recall your earliest recollections. You shattered places founded on lies even as a toddler, innocently pointing up discrepancies that adults would rather ignore at family get-togethers. Classrooms where the limitations of standardized thinking were shown by your inquiries. Social groups where others' theatrical habits were starkly exposed by your sincerity. Because your emotional intelligence worked at frequencies they couldn't understand, they called you too sensitive or too passionate. You developed a greater sense while others learned to repress it. Others accepted superficial answers, but you naturally looked farther. You wondered where they were going, while others followed the mob. You were naturally magnetic even as a little child. Some individuals shared secrets they had never told anybody because they were mysteriously drawn to you. People shied away from your vibe, feeling vulnerable just by being around you. With you, there was never any neutral ground. People were forced to either face their true selves or go into deeper concealment because of your aura, which required a response. This was not only a social attraction, it had a spiritual quality. You were drawn to circumstances that exposed secrets, discussions that revealed falsehoods, situations that revealed dishonesty. You acted as a catalyst for discovery even as a little child. However, you were baffled by the fact that drama seemed to follow you everywhere. Here's what you were unaware of back then, though. This innate propensity to cause trouble wasn't a weakness. The task was cosmic. You were created expressly to be incompatible with structures based on deception, coercion, and dominance. The fact that you are here is evidence that there is another option. The targeting started as soon as they determined that you posed a threat, and it wasn't the apparent type that would have warned you. The smart sort that causes you to doubt yourself rather than them. They transformed your strengths into things to be ashamed of and your talents into things that were seen as flaws. Bossiness was used to describe your leadership skills. Your hunches were written off as overanalyzing. It was said that your exacting standards were perfectionism. Your depth of feeling was portrayed as unstable. They methodically persuaded you that everything strong about you was in fact troublesome. Their first weapon was the educational system. Standardized assessments that were unable to determine your IQ type. Inflexible frameworks that inhibited your ability to solve problems creatively. Those in positions of authority who valued conformity above creativity. They made an effort to cram your multifaceted intellect into their two-dimensional framework. Instructors who were alarmed by your innate intelligence launched covert efforts to erode your self-esteem. Your inquiries were deemed to be disruptive. You were accused of flaunting your knowledge. You were labeled as defiant for your interest. They wanted you to think your intelligence was a social liability. As they persuaded other kids to disregard your genuineness, the peer pressure grew stronger. friends who abruptly become aloof, social groupings from which you were excluded without cause, that always felt just out of grasp popularity. In order to make you yearning for acceptance on their terms, they planned your social exclusion. Promote this video so that additional people who are selected like you may find it if its message resonates with you. However, something amazing was taking place behind their backs. Your nature was being strengthened by every effort to repress it, similar to how a muscle becomes stronger when it is strained. Your true self was becoming incredibly resilient. They believed they were shattering you. You were being forged into something indestructible by them. As you got older, the social programming became more intense. Messages from a media that denigrated brilliance and praised mediocrity. Cultural discourses that prioritized victimization over self-determination. Educational ideologies that encouraged you to rely on outside approval rather than your intuition. Examples of selected ones who fell from grace were all around you. Tales about individuals who became too large for their britches. Tales of caution on the perils of being different. They wanted you to be afraid of your own strength and to think that success inevitably leads to failure. They used toxic relationships, their most advanced weapon, to gradually erode your authority as you grew into maturity. These were not chance meetings with troubled individuals. These were carefully placed energy vampires that were designed to drain your vitality. It was always the same pattern. Someone might show up who seemed to really comprehend you. They would lavish you with praise and attention. For every quality that others had critiqued, they would make you feel valued and seen. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but also the souls of many others through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's great design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Take action now. Share your blessings to exalt His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. You believe that you had at last met your soulmate. Your predator had been located. These people were skilled manipulators of emotions. They researched your triggers and took advantage of them. They persistently pounded on your deepest wounds after identifying them. They found your deepest fears and took full advantage of them. They were experts in psychological warfare, masquerading as pals and lovers. Initially, narcissists were fascinating, captivating people who precisely reflected your energy. They gave you the impression that you had discovered your soulmate. However, underneath their phony attractiveness was an unquenchable desire for the same brightness they were lacking. You weren't loved by them. They wanted your authority. The energy vampires followed. People that always had emergencies that needed your help right away. Broken souls in need of ongoing rescue. Black holes in your emotions that took in your light and never gave it back. They taught you that love is synonymous with unending giving and never getting. Then came the gaslighters, master manipulators of reality who caused you to doubt your own senses. They persuaded you that your memories were untrue by rewriting history in real time. They took use of your sympathy to make you feel bad about their violent actions. They made your best asset, your intuition, your worst source of uncertainty. These interactions led you to think that your value was determined by what you could provide others rather than by your intrinsic worth, to equate love with losing yourself, and to equate caring with sacrifice. They thought that love needed you to freely give up your power, so they programmed you to do so. Your inner compass, however, continued to guide you toward the truth even when you were in the midst of these poisonous dynamics. Even if you weren't yet able to identify it, there was always a part of you that sensed when you were being controlled. You were developing a database of warning signs using your intuition that would someday make you impervious to deceit. In reality, each betrayal was a graduation. Each breakup served as a teaching moment for energy autonomy. Unknowingly, every poisonous individual who came into your life was training you to spot and reject their kind right away. They believed they were draining you. They were teaching you. During this time, the dynamics inside the family became more intense. More active initiatives to decrease your light were launched by relatives who had always felt uneasy about it, siblings who challenged your innate skills, parents who undermine your attempts to reach your goals while projecting their own unmet aspirations onto you. Holiday parties turned into battlegrounds where your victories were reduced and your setbacks were amplified. Relatives who used duty as chains, shame as ammo, and guilt as a weapon. They wanted you to think that being loyal required embracing your own limits as well as theirs. Their preferred cage was money. They persuaded spiritual people that having money was bad, that having enough was self-serving, and that having to struggle financially was somehow more honorable. They kept you barely living while hoarding resources. Too worn out to challenge their hegemony, they lived paycheck to paycheck. Programming began early. Hints that wealthy people were naturally dishonest. Tales that implied that all evil sprang from a lack of money. Religious doctrine that linked virtue with poverty. Before you ever had the opportunity to enjoy abundance, they wanted you to dread it. They specialized in career sabotage. Job openings that, although having the ideal requirements, abruptly disappeared. Interviews in which you were unquestionably the best applicant but were not chosen. Politics at work that prevents you from moving up. For the chosen ones, they made glass ceilings especially. Their signature was attached to every financial disaster. Business endeavors that, in spite of meticulous planning, failed because of unforeseen issues. Investments that fell apart right before they paid out. Mistakes made by the bank that usually worked against you. Issues with the law that cost you money. Downturns in the economy that seemed to especially target you. The religious community joined this economic conflict as an accomplice. Teachers who lived in luxury and spoke about poverty consciousness. Gurus who charged thousands for their wisdom, yet said money was irrelevant. Healers who maintained that it was morally immoral to charge for spiritual talents. While they created empires on your modesty, they kept you focused on maintaining your humility. Credit turned into a weapon against you. Mechanisms that keep you in debt. Rates of interest that went up while you're making progress. Applications for loans are denied for unclear reasons. Financial organizations that, while interacting with you, appear to follow various guidelines. However, your relationship with plenty was changing in unexpected ways. Every financial hardship taught you how to appropriately evaluate resources. You learned how little you truly needed to survive from each shortage experience. Every financial hardship helped you become more resilient and resourceful. Unbeknownst to you, you were becoming ready to manage wealth sensibly, to create institutions that empower rather than exploit, and to utilize wealth as a tool for freedom rather than dominance. Must realize that money is only energy, and that those who are able to manage it intelligently receive energy. They attempted to keep you impoverished. You were being trained to transform prosperity. They attacked your physical vessel after all else failed. Mental health issues that appeared to appear out of nowhere, persistent weariness that physicians couldn't explain, and unexplained diseases with no apparent medical reason. They knew that they would attempt to break you physically if they couldn't shatter your spirit. The healthcare system turned become yet another battleground. Physicians who wrote off your problems as psychological. Despite the apparent discomfort, specialists were unable to identify any issues. Drugs that caused more issues than they resolved. Insurance firms who refused to pay for badly needed procedures. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be with you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the world's fleeting concerns. As the Holy Bible says, everything done in faith will be rewarded by God's abundant blessings. Luke 6 verse 38, like that mighty oak tree, our roots are deeply anchored in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stance we hold is secure by His power. And now, you have the opportunity to be a part of this blessing. When you click the Super Thanks button and make a $100 donation, this act will return to you 100-fold. Toxins in the environment seem to especially target you. Allergies that appeared suddenly. sensitivity to chemicals that prevented regular living, food intolerances that compelled you to alter your diet entirely. They were using the same water you drank and the air you breathed to target your physical vessel. Physical symptoms were a manifestation of the stress of ongoing spiritual battle. The strain of waging wars on several fronts at once caused your immune system to deteriorate. Threats were continual and genuine, so your nervous system remained on high alert. Your mind was educated to disregard the warnings your body was shouting. Sleep turned to become yet another battlefield. Insomnia that hit right when you wanted to sleep. Nightmares that are intended to cause subconscious anguish. Sleep disturbances that hindered appropriate recovery and repair. They realized that it was simpler to manage and influence a weary chosen one. Emotional turmoil was caused by hormonal abnormalities. Adrenal tiredness from ongoing stress reactions. Thyroid disorders that impacted your energy and metabolism, and reproductive health difficulties that targeted your creative life force. Your physical base was being methodically undermined by them. But within your cellular structure, something remarkable was taking place. Dormant healing powers were being triggered by each strike. You learned about the relationship between mental and physical health from every sickness. Each recovery demonstrated your extraordinary capacity for regeneration and strength. You weren't weak because you were sensitive. An early warning system was in place. It wasn't a disorder, your anxiousness. It was a suitable reaction to the real threat. It wasn't a chemical imbalance that caused your depression. It was suffocating spiritually amid poisonous surroundings. You found alternative treatment techniques that the medical establishment attempted to discredit once you realized that this recovery increased tremendously. When conventional treatment failed, energy healing was effective. Natural solutions that didn't only treat symptoms, but also addressed the underlying problems. Spiritual activities that helped you repair the trauma that was stored in your cells. The actual conflict was always taking place in realms that most people are unaware of. They assaulted your dreams while you were asleep. They sent diversions while you were meditating. They murmured misgivings as you prayed. The battle for your soul took place at frequencies that are incomprehensible to the human eye. Like spiritual parasites, negative spirits cling to your energy field. These demons were not symbolic. They were real creatures who thrived on uncertainty, dread, and hopelessness. From within your own energy system, they affected your thoughts, magnified your fears, and caused emotional turmoil. It was never intended for you to travel this route by yourself. There is more to the obsidian inner order than meets the eye. It is a haven for the awakened, the exiled, and those who have been abandoned for their truth and gaslight for their abilities. We get together live on Zoom once a week. Stories of change from real individuals with genuine faces. The psychic skills of a former CFO were accepted. A healer who overcame ritual torture and discovered their power, and a seer who liberated themselves from religious oppression. We're joined by dozens of others who have been through precisely what you have. Your spiritual family is this group. I will never abandon you. I will never allow you to experience this revelation by yourself. I would never ignore your pain as if it were a sign of disdain. You are not punished by being banished from a normal world. For us and the family that chose you back, it was a prelude to this. Join the inner order of obsidians. In the description, there's a link. People around you were influenced by evil powers to behave contrary to your best interests. Relatives who abruptly become antagonistic. Pals who developed an unexplained jealousy. People who felt obligated to verbally or physically assault you. They were delivering their spiritual battle through human vessels. Psychic assaults pretended to be self-doubt, perplexity, or melancholy. No one publicly discusses this degree of spiritual warfare, so you felt like you were going crazy. Agents entered the spiritual community itself and preached weakening, watered-down techniques. Dream warfare evolved into severe nightmares intended to cause subconscious anguish. Phony spiritual encounters intended to impede your growth. Astral assaults that left you feeling worn out when you woke up. They knew that your defenses were at their weakest in the dream realm. You were a valuable target because of your innate psychic powers. They attempted to skew every vision you were given. They tried to corrupt every intuitive download. They interfered with every instance of heavenly connection. Their goal was to entirely shut you off from your source. You were put in contact with false spiritual instructors, gurus who combined deception with the truth. More trauma was caused by healers than was recovered. Psychics whose messages were intended to be confusing rather than illuminating. To stop your true awakening, they infiltrated every spiritual community. Technology turned into a tool for spiritual conflict. Your vibration was lowered by social media algorithms that presented you with material. News streams that made people anxious and afraid all the time. Digital gadgets that interfered with your natural energy fields and biorhythms. However, their spiritual assaults had an unexpected result. In order to enhance your connection to the divine source until it became inaccessible, they made you acquire supernatural discernment, the ability to discriminate between genuine spiritual experiences and manufactured interference. By attempting to eliminate their biggest spiritual threat, they produced their most powerful spiritual adversary. They developed loneliness as their most advanced weapon. They methodically took genuine relationships out of your existence. Genuine companions were persuaded to mysteriously disappear. Mentors abruptly and mysteriously stopped being available. For reasons they were unable to explain, family members became aloof. They wanted you to think you were fighting this war by yourself. The social engineering was well-planned and exact. They determined who in your social group actually encouraged your development and worked to turn them against you. Now is the perfect time to click the super thanks button on YouTube and share God's blessings. You can contribute to his plan and become a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you multiplied beyond your expectations. Remember, his protection and blessings are with you in every step you take and every donation you make. You become part of his divine plan. You are a powerful, radiant being, unshakable like his mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with this confidence and courage. Be blessed, and may the Lord's light guide your way. Misunderstandings that developed into long-lasting divisions. Rumors that ruined friendships that lasted a lifetime. Events that resulted in the removal of important persons from your life. Social isolation was followed by professional isolation. Co-workers who no longer involve you in significant tasks. Gatherings for networking where you were quietly left out. Relationships in the industry that unexpectedly disappeared. They were denying you professional chances while presenting it as a logical progression of your career. As they persuaded possible partners to turn you down for trivial reasons, dating got more challenging. Relationships that broke just when they were beginning to take things seriously. Partners whose life objectives suddenly become irreconcilable. Romantic partners who were obviously a good fit, yet mysteriously lost interest. They were blocking the development of romantic relationships that may offer emotional support. There were several reasons for the seclusion. You started to question your own strength since no one was there to see it. You began to doubt your sanity as you had no allies to validate your experiences. You undervalued your achievements if there was no one to share in your triumphs. When you had no one to rely on, you began to question your value. Emotional isolation was frequently followed by geographic isolation. Transitions of employment that caused you to be separated from support networks. Housing circumstances that compelled you to live in strange places, or family crises that necessitated moving to places where you knew no one. You were being physically separated from anyone who could provide validation for your experiences. Isolation, however, also turned into your secret superpower. For the first time, you heard your true voice in the quiet. You formed an unbreakable bond with yourself when you were alone. You learned in the loneliness that when you are connected to a heavenly source, you are never really alone. It was in the abandoning that you discovered your own sovereignty. The compelled self-examination uncovered talents you were unaware you had, creative skills that developed on their own, writing abilities that blossomed in quiet, Self-care led to the development of healing talents, leadership abilities that developed with independence. Your genuine might could grow unhindered amid solitude, which turned into your haven. You were able to hear spiritual counsel more clearly than ever before during the calm times. Your own voice became more powerful without the cacophony of other people's viewpoints. Your true self completely surfaced without the compulsion to fit in. You turned your alone time into productive time. In solitude, projects that had proven unfeasible in group settings went smoothly. Deeply focused creative breakthroughs were eventually able to materialize. It was at last possible to completely study spiritual activities that required seclusion. They thought it was punishment, so they gave you the gift of isolation. Your genuine spiritual family was made possible by everyone who departed your life. You learned to appreciate true loyalty after each betrayal. You were being prepared for unconditional self-love by each abandonment. They believed that being alone would make you weaker. You become completely independent as a result. Your sense of self was the target of their last attack. Their go-to tactic for psychological warfare was gaslighting. They persuaded you that your recollections were untrue. Your impressions were incorrect. Your emotions weren't valid. They wanted you to question everything, particularly your strength. It was a complex and multi-layered gaslighting. To make you question your own memories, they reframed your early years. They challenged your explanations of what happened until you began to doubt them. For seeing patterns that were utterly genuine, they drove you insane. Labels became one of their weapons. Insane, challenging, too sensitive, impractical, attention-seeking, mentally ill, paranoid, and deluded. In an attempt to make these phrases a part of your reality, they used them like profanity. These labels were propagated by society until you began to believe them yourself. Expert diagnoses were used to undermine your spiritual experiences. Personality problems that pathize your innate skills, mental health illnesses that explained away your psychic powers, and drugs that sapped your vitality and muted your intuition. The medical establishment was used as a weapon against your spiritual growth. Your worst issues were methodically reframed as your greatest assets. Your paranoia was your insight. They called your leadership arrogant. It was said that your independence was selfish. Your sincerity was seen as impoliteness. It was said that your exacting standards were perfectionism. They gradually destroyed your self-image and replaced it with their warped version. Identity confusion became a problem on social media. Curated pictures that gave the impression that everyone else's lives were ideal. Comparison culture that brought attention to your perceived shortcomings. Mechanisms for validation that rely more on outside approval than on internal knowledge. They made you question your value by using technology. These identity attacks were supported by cultural programs. People like you were represented as tragic characters or villains in TV series and films. Articles in the news that vilified everyone who challenged authority. Social movements that promoted victim awareness while appropriating spiritual terminology. But behind this psychological warfare, something significant was taking place. In reality, every instance of identity confusion helped you become more like who you truly were. Every inquiry concerning your intended identity was exposing your true self. Unwavering inner awareness eventually overcame every doubt they sowed. It wasn't uncertainty that caused the identity crisis. It was waking up. You were not becoming less of yourself. They had forced you to adopt a phony identity, which you are now discarding. You become more in tune with your actual self with each questioning session. Each uncertainty over their portrayal of you bolstered your bond with your true self. Then something changed. The same strategies that had been effective for years abruptly, drastically, and unquestionably ceased functioning overnight. Your intuition had gotten so strong that the gaslighting failed. You had mastered the art of enjoying your own company, so the solitude seemed serene. You had become too strong for them to frighten, so the attack appeared pitiful. It was not a slow awakening. It was explosive, like years of pressure for a dam to collapse. With amazing force, everything they had attempted to repress returned. Your psychic powers came back stronger than before. Your intuition sharpened. You felt your energy become larger than it had ever been. You became able to view the wider picture clearly. Each obstacle had served as a training ground. Each treachery had been a disguised gift. You have been strengthening yourself for this particular moment with every moment of hardship. There was no punishment for you. You were getting ready for something that had never happened before. The synchronicity started to pick up speed. At the proper times, the right individuals showed up. The timing of the opportunities was supernaturally accurate. Unexpected sources of resources came your way. The cosmos was showing that it had been planning your defense the entire time. Not only did your enemy's strategies cease to be effective, they also started to backfire dramatically. Your strength was merely increased by every attempt to subdue you. Your voice simply became louder despite every attempt to hush you. Every attempt to cut you off simply strengthened your bond with the source. It wasn't just a personal breakthrough. It was a generational issue. You weren't only tending to your own injuries. You were lifting centuries' worth of curses that had afflicted your lineage. Your win was more than simply a personal one. For everyone who would pursue you, it was a communal liberty. Manifesting before their eyes was their worst fear. Not only was the chosen one they had made such a valiant effort to repress waking, but they were now fully aware of all they had done. Every lie, every betrayal, every insult, and every manipulation. You knew precisely what that meant, and you recalled everything. Due to global law acting on cosmic scales rather than your deeds, justice started to move with extraordinary speed. Everyone who had deceived you began to suffer the repercussions. All the structures that had repressed you started to fall apart. The power of every entity that had fought you was rapidly diminishing. The karmic retaliation was immediate and brutal. Your energy-draining ex was dealing with the breakdown of their own narcissistic supply. The poisonous relatives who had attempted to dominate you were becoming less in charge of their own life. The dishonest managers who had destroyed your career were seeing their own careers fail. Now watch their life. The buddy who made you doubt your sanity by gaslighting you is now doubting her own reality. The coworker who drained your creativity of its vitality is now dealing with his own creative insolvency. The manipulative family member is drowning in his own loneliness and humiliation after using guilt to manipulate you. The structures that had held you back were crumbling due to internal corruption. The businesses that had treated you unfairly were being sued and going bankrupt. The organizations that had silenced you were becoming less powerful and respected. The systems of authority that had repressed you were disintegrating from within. This is not an accident. This is the mathematically precise operation of karma. All this time, the universe has kept meticulous records. All of your tears were recorded in cosmic databases. All of the injustices you experienced were documented for future adjustment. Every second of your suffering was recorded for compound interest payments. It wasn't simply that they were against you. They made the error of underestimating the cosmic forces that are guarding you. They believed you were battling by yourself. They had divine assistance working from dimensions they couldn't even see, and they were unaware of it. They targeted a person who was protected by universal protection. They're now paying the ultimate price for it. As your consciousness increased, karmic justice hastened. The cosmos reacted to balance the scales more quickly, the more clearly you could see their strategies. A cosmic realignment that had been accumulating for years was being triggered by your waking. Everything you went through was a prelude to this revelation. Your superpowers are the abilities you honed amid hardships. You now have a strategic advantage thanks to the knowledge you acquired via suffering. Your unwavering base is now the strength you developed on your own. You can see through deception right away because of your empathy, which was forged in the furnace of betrayal. Within minutes of meeting someone, you can tell if they're a narcissist. Before they can attach to your field, you are able to identify energy vampires. Before liars even open their mouths, you can tell they're lying. You are practically unstoppable due to your resilience being put to the test in impossible situations. You only get stronger when you do things that would shatter others. What others would defeat simply makes you more determined. Your indomitable essence is shown by what would destroy others. Your intuition functions with superhuman precision because it is constantly refined by danger. You are aware of things before they occur. Opportunities are detected before they materialize. You sense danger even before it materializes. After years of spiritual combat, you have perfected your psychic skills. You are entirely self-sufficient because of your independence, which was developed out of abandonment. To recognize your value, you don't need anyone's approval. To trust your judgment, you don't need confirmation from others. Your pleasure and security are independent of other people. When they attempted to break you, they created their own greatest nightmare. You became stronger with each attack. With each betrayal, you gained wisdom. You were more resolute every time you faced resistance. They turned every barrier into a stepping stone. Each weapon they employed against you turned into a weapon in your toolbox. With each cry they made you weep, you have grown into everything they feared you might be. Their efforts to weaken you simply made your strength stronger. Their attempts to make you weaker simply made your power more apparent. You become indestructible as a result of their effort to destroy you. The gifts they attempted to stifle are now functioning at full potential. The right individuals are drawn to your innate charm, while the wrong ones are repelled. Your ability to speak the truth quickly reveals dishonesty. Everyone you come into contact with is changed by your healing presence. People are inspired to discover their own strength by your leadership skills. The moment has come for you to conquer, not only to survive, to lead, not only to heal, not only to triumph, but to change everything you come into contact with. What you carry is needed by the world. Adversity forged perspective. Impossibility is used to assess strength. Knowledge gained from practical experience. Their world was never intended for you. It was your destiny to make your own. The seclusion served as a training ground for leadership. It was a battle to prepare for triumph. The opposition was preparing for total control. Developing your ability to safely manage unrestricted power was the goal of every task. Respect is now demanded by your presence rather than demanded. People instantly perceive your authority. Entire rooms, buildings, and communities are now included in your energy field. You don't have to declare your dominance. It makes an announcement. All throughout the world, the chosen ones are rising at the same time. You're discovering who your tribe is. Your energy signature is recognized by other awakened beings. Together, you create an unstoppable force network that is working to change reality itself. The repression era is coming to an end. Your light has been put to the test in the darkest places and has come out stronger than before, so it can never be dimmed again. Karma works with flawless justice, and the forces that attempted to ruin you are going to learn this. Believing they could forever stifle limitless potential was their worst mistake. Believe they could dull heavenly light forever and imprison limitless power indefinitely. What doesn't kill you doesn't simply make you stronger. It makes you completely invincible. They overlook that. Greetings from your time of unheard of strength. This is the moment the cosmos has been waiting for. The instant your adversaries chose to resist you, they started causing their own demise. Your greatest triumph is going to become their worst error in history. You are the first to start the revolution. You now know why your journey seems unique and more difficult than others. Why you encountered challenges that appear to be intended to shatter you. Why everything seemed to be working against you from the beginning. There was no punishment for you. You were getting ready. You are unstoppable as an adult because of the same intensity that made you a target as a youngster. The light they attempted to put out is now blazing with a ferocity they never thought was conceivable. They tried to shatter the same spirit, but it has since become indestructible, immovable, and indisputable. You are no longer only an annoyance. It is revolutionary. Your truth is more than simply enlightening now. It has a transformative effect. Your potential is no longer your power. It dominates every area you choose to enter since it is dynamic and lively. In this scenario, the selected ones who identify with themselves are discovering who they really are. As conquerors who triumphed, not as victims who lived. As strong creatures who were momentarily repressed, rather than as wounded souls who recovered. As champions who were destined to rule, not as underdogs who triumphed. Making you their adversary will be remembered as the greatest disastrous error of judgment in spiritual combat history. They transformed their most dangerous adversary into their best possible ally. They turned their potential instructor into their certain demise. They are not the only targets of karma. Karma is here, and you're its main delivery agent, selected one. The fire that burns down their entire system is the light they attempted to put out. Greetings from your realm. The repression era is finished. The selected one's age has begun.